Welcome to Behind the Audition podcast with your host, Curt Hilton. Listen in on interviews with voiceovers, filmmakers, producers, animators, and much more. Curt, a voice actor himself, will give insider tips to the business, talk with guests about how they got into the business, and be sure to stay tuned to the end of the podcast when he challenges his guests with a pop-up audition. Now it's time for Behind the Audition podcast. Here's Curt Hilton.
Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Audition podcast. On this episode, I got to speak to the amazing voice actor, Bob Baker. Bob and I talked about how he started in the voiceover industry, landing as the voice of Brett Favre's outdoor show, landing the voice as Lamborghini, and other huge brands. We talked about matching your voice to a brand and giving it that extra sauce. We also talked about his amazing voiceover booth, how to help your marketing strategy, and how to balance your work life in this industry. So sit back and enjoy another episode of Behind the Audition podcast. And welcome to the show, the man himself. You've heard him voice Lamborghini. You heard him voice Ford, Chevy, Fox Sports, Fox this. He's done it all, folks. Let's give it up for the one, the only, Bob Baker. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for the intro.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, me and you have talked, on the phone, we've instant messaging, we keep in touch. You're in the warm state of Minnesota. We were just talking how it's actually warmer there than it is here in North Carolina. And you've given some great tips to me over the last couple of years in voiceover. Let's talk about you, Bob. When did you first get into voice acting, and why in the world did you want to get into this world of voice acting?
Yeah. So, okay. Well, first off, thanks for having me on here. I've never been interviewed before. So
Awesome.
you're the first.
Nice.
Basically, I stumbled into voiceover, the whole voiceover world. I'm a middle-aged guy, had a 20-year traditional career for a public agency, basically semi-retired, moved out to the Midwest, thought I'd go work at the golf course, mowing the golf course and be good with that. And I found out quickly I wasn't. Like I had to be doing something creative, something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and plus my wife said if I didn't find something soon, she was going to boot me, right? so basically, I did a lot of public speaking in my old job. And a lot of that entailed trying to convince people of certain things and persuade them and change and all that stuff. But also I announce my kids' baseball games and things like that, and you hear this from everybody. Yeah, Bob's got a pretty good voice, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I never thought any of it.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
And then a friend of my wife said, hey, has Bob ever thought of audiobooks? So she comes home, hey, Bob, hey, hon, what about audiobooks? And I said, what the hell? Yeah. So I Google it. That's it. That was 5 years ago. And that is how I stumbled into the voiceover world. And I haven't looked back.
That's awesome. When you see a bunch of voice actors on here and everybody has their own tone. You have the perfect, I would say, that Ford tough outdoorsman voice. And,
right.
You actually did the voice, Brett Favre's outdoor channel show. Yeah. How did that come about?
I'll use that example, but really this applies to kind of a lot of the jobs I have had an opportunity to do. And I think this is something to share for other voice talents out there is, this is not a sprint, this is a marathon. Right. And so I'm always in this mindset that, when I started out, I barely had any work, probably like a lot of other people starting out. If you would have said to me one day you're going to be doing a voiceover for a TV show with Brett Favre, I'd have said, yeah, right. It ain't happening. But I don't think about that, to be honest. So I do all these jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, and you give 150% to each of those clients, whether they're the guy next door who wants it for his kid's school play, mm-hmm. or it's Lamborghini, right?
Right.
And so what happens, and this happened for me, is, if you get that track record going, right, doors start to open, bigger doors. And that's what happened for me over the years is, one led to another, little bigger.
Right.
And that's how I got to that point is, with enough work, enough in the portfolio, someone heard my work and said, hey, they contacted me. And I still work for these guys. It's, they're called Hayden Outdoors. Yeah. They're a big outfitter across the nation. They sell high-end farms, real estate. So they were doing the TV show. They got a hold of me and said, "Hey, Bob, we'd love for you to, do this, and that was it. And I've still worked for them 2-3 years later now.
That's great. And one thing I'll give you a shout out to, with your Instagram, be sure to follow Bob on Instagram. With your Instagram, you have that, like I said, the outdoorsman voice, but
Right.
you kind of fit your niche too, because I'll see you out there fishing, you're out there walking the outdoors,
yeah.
you do some videography. And I took some of your advice, voice what fits you and keep with that instead of just trying to do everything at one time. And you will see people knock on your door saying, "Hey, you know what? You fit this." I recently talked to somebody about, sometimes at the grocery store, I see things like, wow, I'd love to be able to voice that product because I love that product. I think, I believe in it. And you with your fishing, your tackle, the outdoorsy stuff, you see you using it and you actually use your customer stuff. And I think that actually helps you get more credibility. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, no, and I think, and I didn't know that, again, starting out. And I think a lot of us don't, and I remember, I think you're gonna have Bill DeWeese on here.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched a lot of his videos. I really think he has some good sage advice, and part of that was, do you tell the market what your niche is, or does the market tell you?
Right.
And for me, kind of, as over time, I did everything, voicemails, audiobooks. I didn't know what I was good at. But over time, I was getting hired for more of those. And I just so happened to love the outdoors. I love to fish and do all those things. So, you get the credibility because you kind of know what you're talking about.
Right.
And I think that comes through in the voiceover. So I think you're what you said is the best thing. If there's things you love, gardening, do voiceovers about those things, because that extra sauce is going to come through because you love it.
Absolutely. I found myself recently, I kind of got like a brain lock with my marketing. I was like, what am I doing? And sometimes I reach out to my wife. Sometimes I do things in one day, like too much in one day, and I get anxiety. I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I wasted my whole day. I don't know what I did because I'm thinking about too much things to do instead of strategizing on what I need to do. And I've talked to you about this, and exactly you said it. This is definitely a marathon. It's not a sprint. So you have to slow down. How do you keep your work-life balance? I know you have a family. What do you do? Because I know you're a good family guy. What do you do to stop the day, to get away? Because I know this job is addicting. What do you do?
So here's the, I think it's a great question, because to me, this is the biggest struggle for me, right? So, nowadays, especially for like us guys and gals that work from home and do, this kind of freelance voiceover stuff from a home studio, it is about time. Clients want stuff quick,
right?
And I pride myself like on, they ask for it, 20 minutes later, boom, it's in their lap. The problem with that is now you set this expectation, they're used to that, so then I feel like, okay, I got to live up to that standard. And because my studio's at home, it's 11 o'clock at night. I should be hanging out with the family.
Right.
And I'm sitting here on my phone. Oh, I got another client. I got to go. And so the reality is, when I started this, I thought, oh, this is kind of a cool semi-retirement job, here and there. I live in this cave now. And I actually took myself off from work here the last couple of days because I'm getting to a point where, like, you want to still enjoy it, So if you're getting too much into it, it's not fresh, and that means it's not fresh for the client. Right. So, the biggest advice I would say, in which I struggle with, is to get out of this booth.
Exactly.
Go for a walk, go do your fishing, hang out with the family, go watch some cartoons, get away from it. Even if you tell the client, hey, I'm sorry, you got to wait till tomorrow. Just,
exactly.
And I'm not the worst person at doing this, but I realized if I want to keep doing this another 5-10 years, I'm going to have to do that.
Have work hours, right? Have total work hours, and have your clients understand this is a business. It's not just, I can get out of bed because you need a voiceover in 2 weeks. Right.
Yeah. I think I've worked, I'm not kidding you, the last 20 something days in a row, I've worked out in this booth, and you get burnt out. It's like, you can only do so many of these.
That's awesome. And that's another reason why I made this podcast, because I know there's other voice actors like that. Like, I've talked to many of us who, we love working 50, 60 hours a week. And I even talked to my wife, we work more, probably people work more home being at home, we work more hours than we did in the
Right.
office because we have more, we're here. We can just
Right.
pop open the computer. But as voice actors, you're like, you just love it so much and you can't get enough of it. But there
Right.
are days, like you said, where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so burnt out because I don't have a structure. And
Right.
you hit the nail on the head. I take walks 30 minutes a day. I have to get out
Right.
because if I live in the booth, I'm going to be insane.
Well, yeah, and you're so isolated, so
Mhm.
like something I've been exploring to help with that, and I was going to do this before, and I think I'm going to do it again, is I think I'm to the point I'm going to actually like rent a brick and mortar space downtown where I live
Mhm.
and build a studio where I
I love
go
that.
there, maybe bring some local talent, groom some local people to come and do some work in there, so I actually go to a place, I work, and then I come home. And like,
That's great.
so that's kind of my next step in this adventure of voiceovers, I hope.
I just talked to somebody about that. I said, do you think we'll be back in studios again? I think some voice actors like myself would like that option to feel like be around other people. And,
Right.
because I'm definitely an extrovert. I am not an introvert at all.
Right.
If I keep staying home, I will be. But if at the end of the
Right.
day, I think that, what you said, getting out and talking to people and working somewhere else beside your house, it makes you feel like, a little bit more of a fresher atmosphere.
Yeah.
And with your marketing, I'll give you you have some great marketing tips. When you wake up in the morning with your marketing, what do you first do? What's the first thing Bob does when he gets up for marketing? Because you have a
Yeah.
great strategy.
I don't know. I actually don't know a lot about marketing. For me, um, I think like you said, like when I was a kid, I was really into drawing and being an artist and all of that.
Mhm.
And then, I would say I left that and I became a jock. I went in the military, I became a dad, and totally left that. And now I'm like revisiting that old part of me, this being creative, right?
Right.
So for me, when it comes to marketing, like the stuff you do, which I think is great. I love when you're throwing these things that I think they're fun. I love it. Is like I said, I need to take time off.
Yeah.
That's a great example. So like this last week, I said I got to stop. I told the wife,
Yeah.
I said I'm not doing any projects out there. I find myself on Sunday, this last Sunday in here, and I start doing a project, not for a client,
Hmm.
but for like Veterans Day. Nobody asked me to do it,
Good for you.
but I love, you if you love to create, this is like an epic job for that.
Yeah.
And so for me, when it comes to marketing, I'm always thinking, well, if I can't post some work I did, can I create something on my own
Yeah.
and post that? And the other part too is I think also, and being genuine about posting a positive
Yes.
image, that you're a good person and
Yeah.
you love what you're doing, you love your family or whatever you love to do. And I think, yeah, and being genuine about it. But,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you do a lot of things with that too, with your positivity. I've actually told you about this with you stay in your lane. And what I mean by that is you don't worry about what everybody else is doing, and
Right.
you see it on social media. You see voice actors who are a little insecure about not getting a job, insecure about not getting enough this or that with their posts or their auditions. And I've talked to
Right.
some, and they can't take it personal. And you've
Right.
actually said things about don't take things personal. Stay in your
Right.
lane. Focus
Right.
on you because this is about you. It's not about somebody else. How do you keep that set of mind on that too?
Yeah. So here's the thing. One thing I do, and I don't know if it's the right thing, but like, I was on LinkedIn. When I start seeing posts from somebody or an organization that's like, you should do this. You can't make it if you don't. As soon as I see that,
Right.
I unfollow. I don't
Yeah.
want to see it.
Hmm.
I don't want anybody ruining my fantasy,
Right.
my self-talk
Right.
that you can do this.
Right.
You can do this. You
Hmm.
can be whatever you want to be in this.
Right.
And there is no rule. I don't want anybody telling me rules about it.
Right.
And as soon as I hear these are the rules,
Hmm.
I run the other direction.
That's good. That's
So
great.
that's kind of my approach to it. But we all have egos, so,
Sure.
you're always having to check yourself, I think,
Hmm.
especially with auditions or,
Yeah.
I've done some big jobs, like big spots,
Right.
and there is no bigger blow, I think, at least for me, when you do a big job, right? You get paid for it, you do a big directed session, all these things. And then a month later, out comes the spot, and you think, yeah, baby, you turn up your speakers, you're like, let's go, baby. You're ready to post it on social media, and it's not your voice.
Oh yeah. You got me excited. Like you got it. Like,
No,
it
it happens. You know, you do it, and you know, they've got a bunch of people who are weighing in, and you know, they're trying different voice actors, and it ends up not being you. Right. And so you could feel devastated, like, holy, you know, what happened? Did I do something wrong? But you know, at the end of the day, it comes down to what they're looking for. It's nothing personal.
Absolutely.
You know, and you know, easier said than done. But I mean, that's kind of, and I think what you like, you always keep them positive. Your posts are positive, and just
I try
to stay healthy. You're just trying to stay healthy, going out for walks.
I appreciate that.
And keep yourself motivated. I mean, this is a marathon.
Right. You know, what's funny is like a while back, I actually called you because I felt bad because seeing things on social media, like I posted something and you commented, but I said something, I didn't mean it that way. And you're like, I'm like, oh my God, I called you. I'm like, oh my gosh, hope you didn't take it the wrong way. But this is the way it is now. Everybody's so like on the edge, like, you know, afraid they're going to say something wrong and sensitive. And you cannot be sensitive. And as a voice actor, I mean, I don't care where we are in the world, you cannot be sensitive. You have to let it go. I've heard people who beat me out on jobs, and instead of getting upset about it, I sit back and listen to what they did.
Right.
And then I go back and look at the direction, and 9 times out of 10, it's me. I didn't follow the directions exactly like they like. And I'll own up to it. I'll be like, you know what? They wanted this tone. I just recorded it quick. So what I stopped doing was, instead of taking every audition that I get coming in, look at it. Is that really me? Is that really going to fit my lens?
That's perfect.
Yeah. And so that's what I started doing today. I had 3 and I'm like, yeah, I'm excited about it, but I know that's not me. And I'm not going to waste my time on that anymore.
I, you know, a couple of years ago, I used to do, 30, 40 a day auditions. I mean, I was, you know, on voices, voice 1, 2, whatever. I mean, I was doing them one after another. But now, like you said, I'm to this point now, like I might do a couple a day. I might have 50 invitations to do some, but I'm real selective on which ones really speak to me. Right. And those are the only ones I do.
Absolutely. So let's talk about your booth. I love your booth. You have the coolest booth. And for those, and I'm a coffee drinker. So I mean, for those who like to have coffee, you made your booth. You had an older booth that you didn't have the coffee beans, but then you took the coffee bean bags and you made this huge studio out of them. How did you get those coffee bags? That's really cool.
Yeah. Well, you know, I started off with the blanket over the head. And then I made the blanket booth. Then I made a regular sweat box, plywood. And my son and I, you know, one thing I learned doing this is like, you need space. Yeah. Like, you know, I do. I need like space around me, not so confined in these boxes, you know? Yeah. And I actually think it's better for the sound as well. So basically, you know, I went up on SketchUp, you know, where you can draw up stuff. I did a bunch of research about sound. Yeah. You know, and I built this studio. It's probably like, I don't know, 10 by 9 by like 11, the ceiling. But all the walls are different angles. All the walls are different lengths. I framed it out, insulated the floor. Yeah. And then what some people will do, you know, there's sound treatment, sound proofing. So, you know, where this is located out in on my property, there's not a lot of sound externally. Yeah. So I didn't have to worry too much about green glue and all that stuff. Yeah. And I really focused on acoustics internally. So, you know, it's all rock wool. And then I went to a local coffee roaster here where I live. Yeah. And they had these coffee bags, I think like $1 a pop. That's great. I brought them in here. You know, they're basically like using, what's the material that they're made of?
It's like a burlap, mesh, right? Yeah.
Like burlap. Yeah. You know, so it lets the, you know, sound waves through and hits the rock wool, but it keeps the rock wool from coming out basically. And it's just, that's it. I just put them all up in here.
I love the way it looks. It's like almost nostalgic because I love the older style booths. You know, you go back in the day with sound panels, and that's what I did with mine. I didn't really, when I just redone mine, I didn't want to do foam. I wanted to do sound panels, right? Because I want to feel like I'm in literally in like a big old padded room, if you want to say. I don't want to feel that way. And so I guess for going back in time, tell yourself, what would you tell yourself get into this about worrying about a booth, worrying about sound and like mics? Because a lot of people are a little insecure about that, like, you know, afraid to show what they got. What do you tell those people?
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, here, you know, I watched a video. I popped up on my feed the other day, and it was another Bill DeWeese one. but it was a little bit older. And I thought, oh, I'll watch that again. It's about mics, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that guy's got some great advice.
Yes.
Like really down to earth.
Absolutely.
Like if you're starting out, I watch that dude because, and he talked about mics, like, and it's true. Most of our voiceovers people listen to are right on these phones,
right,
and tablets. They're not listening to your voiceover in a $10,000 studio setup, right?
Right.
So like he said, they're not going to know the difference between you on a Sennheiser or on a $150 mic when they're listening on a speaker on their phone. And a lot of clients aren't either, you know? And so I think the most important thing though is, like he says, the acoustics of your room.
Yes.
Not having a muddy, boxy sound. But that's not going to come as much from your mic as how you treat your space.
Right.
And what you do with some EQ and things like that. So, you know, I would say, you know, like it's been put out there already. Don't start spending thousands of dollars on all this gear. That's not going to make you, that's not going to get you the jobs.
Right.
They're not going to go, oh, hell, he's got a Neumann or whatever. We're going to hire him because of that. They could care less.
Right.
The main thing is, can you tell their story? If you can tell their story, you're going to get hired.
I love that. And so, and with your atmosphere, I like the, you know, the whole setup. You got the old school stand there. You got, for those watching, and you got like the background. What would you do? Like if you could change one thing about your studio, what would you change?
Well, I mean, I'm at the phase now where I'm about to maybe move out of this space. So I built, I don't know if you see on Instagram, I built a really big shed.
That's awesome.
It's beautiful. This is beautiful shed out there. And people in the neighborhood are teasing me. They're like, Bob, you know, that's probably the most beautiful shed we've ever seen. Are you using that as a shed or something else? I said, well, I think I want it to be my new studio, but then then I was like, I wasn't going to do it, but I'm thinking, am I either going to move into this bigger space or I'm going to move downtown into a bigger space? My vision for what I want next is a bigger space. I want like a standing area like I have here. Yeah. Off in a corner with a lot of distance to that next corner. And I want a couch in there. I want it to be almost like my voiceover place, hangout place. Yeah. You know, that people can come. You know, if I get some other talents, I want to come in there. It's just casual, but it's big enough. Right. And I really do think if you treat the acoustics right, a bigger space doesn't sound as boxy. And that's the biggest thing I struggled with when I was in the smaller booth. You know, you're cramped in there, the sound, you know, the bass is getting trapped up in there. Move your shoulder one bit, or if this hits your beard or whatever, you hear every sound. Yeah. Because here's what I really think at the end of the day is, when to get these jobs, it's all about, everybody sounds good. It's the extra sauce, right? Yeah. What's that extra sauce? And this is what I believe. The days I feel really good in the booth, I went for a walk. I did my crunches, not that I ever do them, but I did some crunch. I'm feeling good. That comes through that in your delivery, your passion. Absolutely. Yeah. And people loved it. When someone's positive and that comes through, people like that. So I would say whatever space you create, make it something where you feel good in there. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh yeah. And I'm working on talking to somebody here. They're here in Raleigh. So they build 10 by 11 offices, home offices. They're called home offices, mobile. So they actually build in your backyard their home office, because this is a new thing coming out. And I'm going to talk to them about building these for voiceover. So hopefully that's going to be in a future episode. So the 10 by 14 booths that they can build. There are smaller ones that start with W. I'm not going to talk about the names, but so let's talk about one thing before we get the audition challenge. Talk about like an audition you did that you bombed that you remember, like a fun story where you're like, oh my gosh, I always like to bring these up too as well. Well, I guess the ones I bombed, I probably didn't know because I didn't hear back from them. Yeah. But I will tell you a funny story on my first directed session at a studio. Oh, that's awesome. And it was down in Minneapolis. And I remember I got an email. Hey, client heard your work. They love your stuff. We're going to bring you down to Minneapolis to, what was the studio called? Audio Ruckus. Oh, cool. It's a big studio down there. So I'm like, oh, I kept my cool. It's like, oh, okay, sure, I'll be there. And then I was like, and so I told the wife, and we drove down together. And I'd never been to a real studio, so I go in, and I'm like awestruck. They got the couches and
Yeah.
the
I love
fancy
that stuff.
water,
Yes.
and I was like, damn. So I go in there and met the engineer and all these people, and they put me in the isolation room. And I remember looking over, and here's this big window, and they're all in there. I mean, there's the company representative. This was for a couple TV commercials. Company representatives, the sound engineer, the director. I mean, I'm like, holy hell. And then in front of me is this Neumann $10,000 mic, whatever, they're high-end mics. I'm like, okay, let's go, baby. Let's go.
Yeah.
But I'm ready to puke, right? I'm nervous. So we get going. As soon as I get like 5 words out, I can barely breathe. You get like 5 words out.
Oh yeah.
It's hot as hell in there. So I don't know why I wore a sweater.
You're
like
out of your
dying.
element too. You're out of your element.
So I do the couple, and they're like, oh, stop. And I'm like, oh, hell. So the sound engineer, he runs in there, takes off that Neumann, and he throws on a Sennheiser. I guess my voice works better on one of these. So
yeah,
they pop it on. They're like, okay, here we go. And this was the part that cracked me up. So like, okay, Bob, go ahead and get going. So I start, oh, stop. And then they give me, he says something. But the sound engineer, like every take I do, is okay, take 2, take 3.
Oh my goodness. Oh wow.
And then the director kid, he must have been like 15. He looked like a little kid to me. And he's like, all he keeps saying the whole time, Bob, we need more smile. We need more smile, Bob. So I'm like the Joker. Like I told the kid, I said, if I smile any harder, dude, like something's breaking here.
This is great. I love it.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
And then at some point, I mean, I'm smiling, I'm delivering these lines. And then he says, I'll never forget it. All right, Bob, dial it back. Dial the smile back. And so
that is great. Was he 15, but he had a voice of a 45-year-old man?
No,
is that what it was?
He was like a little kid in there,
That
probably,
is awesome.
he was, and this goes on, but then, we're like take 55.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm thinking, I'm blowing this. Like, I mean, I'm thinking, I've just blown this. So, it goes on, we finish it, but I'm determined. We go through it, get it done, walk out, and the agent who hired me is like, hey, Bob, way to go. You rocked it. They really appreciate it. I thought, oh shit. Okay. So it turned out good. They gave me like some extra, like a bonus for, sticking it out. But the lesson learned was I was nervous about doing it, but I said, screw it.
Yeah, man.
I just went for it.
I love it.
And because of that, it gave me that experience now where, another directed session, I'm not as nervous.
Mm-hmm.
And I what to expect. But yeah, that was a funny story. The biggest thing was, Bob, you got to smile more.
See, and I love hearing these stories. That's what it's good motivation for those, because it's not always perfect. And we love those where you take like 2 takes and it's like, man, that was awesome. Only if that could happen every time. But now it's time to have some fun. It's time for the audition challenge. And I sent you over the script of the decade. Oh yeah, we got Christmas coming up next month. It's not yet. Some people are celebrating. It's November right now, but some people are getting excited for next month. And Clark W. Griswold and the station wagon days. I mean, you are the man for the auto commercials. So I wrote a good copy for you for whenever you're ready.
And this is okay. Here we go. The all new 8-wheel drive station wagon is here. It's bold wood paneling with stressed design hubcaps. This is the vehicle to drive across the country and when you go mudding with your friends.
See, could you imagine hearing that on TV? Your voice, you would sell like, man, I got to get me an 8-wheel drive station wagon. Well, it's been so good having you on here. And my typical cliche question, what do you tell those getting into the industry? What motivational things do you tell those getting into the industry that you want to go ahead and let us know about?
I would just say, believe in yourself and work hard. Believe in yourself, work hard. If you fall down, get up and just keep going. If you love it, like I fell in love with and still love it, you will be successful. If you're willing to do it, even on your off day, you will be successful. But it is a marathon, and just keep your chin up, keep believing, and tell people's story. When you do these auditions and you do a voiceover, I mean, you want to sound good if you want,
Mm-hmm.
but you got to tell their story. And part of that is asking them the right questions. Some clients don't even know their own story. So you really got to ask the right questions and focus on telling their story. That's my advice.
I love it. I love it. And, I do still remember that last conversation about a year and a half ago. And we were talking, like, motivation was down. You said, look, man, remember, this is not, it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. I totally remember that conversation. It keeps with me. That's one thing I appreciate is your friendship and your conversation over for the long time here. And thank you, Bob Baker, for being on Behind the Audition podcast.
Yeah. And thank you, man, for doing this. I feel honored to be interviewed. I'll probably never get interviewed again.
Oh, yes, you will. Absolutely, man.
Yeah. But keep doing what you're doing, man. I think it's great. You're interviewing people. And I love that you're always looking forward. You're doing stuff. And that's how doors open. So
I appreciate it. Absolutely. Thanks so much, Bob.
All right. Take care.
To find out more about Bob Baker or to book him for a project, visit bobbakersvoice.com.
Thanks for listening in on Behind the Audition podcast, made possible by Hilton Productions. If you need a male or female voiceover, contact us at hiltonproductions.com. Hilton Productions, let our voices do the selling.